Linda's 50th birthday gift arrived in a dented Amazon box, no note, just buttersoft leather journal smelling faintly of cinnamon and poor decisions. Toronto's November gloom pressed against her condo windows, same vibes as her silent group chats now that Jake's dorm bunk bed held his hockey posters. Community center yoga flyers piled up unread, but this demanded ink. That night, she spilled lukewarm chai over page 1, smudging virtual journaling circle, no pants required into a Rorschach test of possibility. Linda's 50th birthday gift arrived in a dented box, but its contents were pristine, a butterscotch leather notebook, its cover soft as her grandmother's gloves. She'd worn those gloves on her wedding day, clutching them too tight, just as she now clutched this blank page. Toronto's autumn light slanted across her kitchen table, turning her hesitation golden. 3 weeks since her youngest left for university, and house hummed with absence, a fridge too full of uneaten leftovers, a staircase creaking under no footsteps. She opened notebook. Hesitant fingers traced its spine. What if her words just echoed in this void? Like shouting into a canyon and hearing only your own voice, tinny and small. But then her phone buzzed, a notification from virtual journaling circle she'd joined on a whim, women from 6 time zones sharing snippets of their lives. A woman in Melbourne had sketched her morning coffee, steam curling off page. Another in Lisbon wrote about learning to salsa, her clumsy step 53. Linda smirked. Maybe grace was overrated. That night, she wrote about community center down street, where she'd once taken her kids for pottery classes. How clay had smelled like earth after rain. How her son, 7, had proudly presented her a lopsided mug she still used for tea. Words spilled, messy and alive. Notebook absorbed them, its pages thickening like layers of sediment, proof she was still here, still becoming. By November, her entries had rhythm. She chronicled maple outside her window, its leaves clinging then letting go. Jotted down snippets overheard farmer's market, Honeycrisp apples, firm as a handshake, and taped in a pressed crimson leaf. Virtual Circle cheered her on, their comments like embers in a Linda's 50th birthday gift arrived in a dented box, wrapped in brown paper that smelled faintly of cedar. Inside lay a buttery leather notebook, its cover etched with winding vines, an heirloom quality thing begging to be filled. She'd scoffed first. What did she have left to say? Her nest had emptied when Jake left for university, and Toronto's autumn chill seeped into her bones like unspoken loneliness. But habit won. Each morning, she scribbled mundane things, grocery lists, weather reports, a funny typo from a bakery sign, freshly baked despair, clearly meant to say Danish. Then one rainy Tuesday, she spilled chamomile tea over a page. Blotting it with her sleeve, she noticed how stains bloomed into feathery shapes. On impulse, she sketched around them, creating inky wings. A laugh bubbled up. Maybe blank pages weren't voids. Maybe they were runways. Her daughter video called that night. "Mom, you're glowing," she said, and creator realized she'd spent 20 minutes gushing about her accidental art. Later, Googling journaling for beginners, she stumbled upon a virtual circle, page turners, a global crew of women who met weekly to share scribbles, stains, and stories. Their vibe was warm but no nonsense. "We don't do pity parties," said Marisol, moderator, a retired teacher from Texas with a voice like spiced honey. "We do proof. Proof of living, of adapting, of turning stumbles into material." Linda's first attempt joining was a comedy of errors, muted when she meant to talk, camera angled her ceiling fan. But Marisol just chuckled. "Honey, we've all been 50 and tech clueless." Group's prompts were simple: write about a smell that teleports you. Doodle your mood as a weather pattern. Linda's entries started tentative, then loosened. She wrote about Jake's childhood blanket, still folded in his closet, and how its faded dinosaurs made her smile now instead of ache. She painted a thunderstorm with glitter, because why not? By winter, her notebook had become a living thing, its spine cracked from use, margins crowded with pressed maple leaves and ticket stubs from community center lectures. She'd signed up for a memoir workshop on a whim, surprising herself by reading aloud a passage about teaching Jake to ride a bike. Room erupted in snaps. A silver-haired woman gripped her arm afterward. "You made me remember my son's first steps." "Thank you." Woman hadn't set out to mentor anyone, but when a new member joined page turners, Anya, a Ukrainian immigrant clutching her own blank notebook like a life raft, she recognized that flicker of what now. Without thinking, she shared how tea stains had saved her. Anya's eyes lit. So it's okay if it's messy. Better than okay, creator said. It's honest. Leather notebook, once stiff, now curled comfortably in her palm, its pages a testament to life spills and repairs. Linda still missed Jake's daily chaos, but her days had. Linda's 50th birthday gift arrived in a dented box, wrapped in brown paper that smelled faintly of cedar. Inside lay a leather notebook, its cover buttersoft, edges worn just enough to suggest it had stories waiting to be filled rather than finished. She ran a thumb over its spine, half expecting it to purr. Instead, it just sat there, judging her. 3 weeks post-empty nest, her house had become an echo chamber of misplaced mugs and unsolicited quiet. She'd tried yoga, then sourdough, then rearranging furniture like some derailed interior designer. Nothing stuck. That notebook, though, it nagged. One rainy Tuesday, she cracked it open and scrawled, "Today I yelled a potted fern for not thriving. Maybe we're both struggling." Dry humor, her old armor. Toronto's community centers had always been her sanctuaries, places where life hummed without demanding participation. On a whim, she signed up for a virtual journaling circle hosted by one. Screen names popped up like digital campfire sparks: Maple Leaf 54, Midnight Baker, Tea Lady. No cameras, just voices sharing scribbles. Linda's first entry was a ramble about missing her son's sock avalanches. Feedback rolled in, emojis, typed same, girl s, a chorus of me too. But doubt crept in. Was this just navel-gazing with a side of Wi-Fi? She skipped a session, let notebook gather dust beside a half-dead succulent. Then, stubborn as winter in April, she pushed back. Wrote about her mother's hands, how they'd kneaded dough and regret in equal measure. How age had sanded her own edges softer. Circle's responses weren't fixes, they were mirrors, reflecting parts of herself she'd forgotten. Leather grew suppler with use, just like her resolve. Some entries were cringeworthy, others cathartic. She documented missteps like a scientist, burned casseroles, botched Zoom mute buttons, each a tiny rebellion against perfection. Journal became her fight club, her so what manifesto. By spring, Linda didn't just write, she noticed. Crocuses punching through sidewalk cracks, baristas who remembered her order. Notebook bulged with grocery lists, haikus, a eulogy for her favorite chipped teacup. Grief hadn't vanished, but it had company. Virtual meets became her Thursday highlight, that pixelated circle a lifeline. One night, Midnight Baker shared a line that stuck: "Empty nests make room for new flight patterns." Linda smirked, underlined it twice. Maybe 50 wasn't an ending, just a page turn, leather creasing but holding firm. Linda's 50th birthday gift arrived in a dented box, but that leather notebook inside. Pristine. Smooth as butter, smelling faintly of possibility. She'd planned to scribble grocery lists, maybe vent about her too-quiet house now that both kids had flown west. Instead, she found herself hunched over at 3 a.m., pouring out decades of unsaid things, how silence echoed louder than soccer games ever had, how her hands felt idle without lunchboxes to pack. Then came impromptu project. No grand plan, just vibes. Creator started snapping photos of her journal pages, raw, unfiltered, and tossed them into a virtual journaling circle she'd stumbled upon. Just like that, her midnight musings became a lifeline for strangers. A woman in Boise wrote, "Your words feel like my bones." Another in Miami, "You made me laugh cry in line CVS." Linda's fingers hovered over keyboard. Was this her voice? Skepticism arrived in form of Margot, her spin class nemesis, who'd once scoffed, "Journaling. Isn't that for teens with sparkly pens?" But when Linda's entry about baking and burning her first solo birthday cake went mini-viral, complete with a shot of her holding charred disaster, grinning like a maniac, Margot slid into her DMs, "Okay, which? How'd you turn sad into art?" Cue roar. Not just from Margot, but from Community Center's book club, where woman now led right like no one's watching workshops. Women twice her age, half her age, all scribbling furiously, unearthing stories they didn't know they carried. That leather notebook. Now a baton, passed hand to hand. One evening, Linda stood before a Zoom grid of faces, her reflection flickering on screen. No empty nest here, just a sky full of wings, hers included. She smirked her own tiny goof, forgetting to unmute for a full minute. 50 and flawless, she thought, hitting button last. Crowd erupted. Not bad for a woman who'd started with a dented box and a quiet house. Linda's 50th birthday gift arrived in a dented box, but that scuffed leather notebook inside. Pure magic. Empty Nest blues had clung like stale perfume, until she cracked it open and spilled her heart onto its creamy pages. Soon, her scribbles morphed into something wild, a virtual journaling circle for women with grown kids and untamed dreams. Toronto's community centers buzzed about her quirky habit of doodling coffee stains into constellations, turning mess into meaning. 6 months in, that notebook bore scars of its own, dog-eared corners, smudged ink from rainy day epiphanies, a pressed maple leaf from High Park. Linda's circle grew faster than her neglected begonias. She guided strangers to mine joy from chaos, their shared vibes stitching a safety net under midlife leaps. By year's end, her Write Your Next Chapter meetups had birthed mural collaborations, a podcast, even a salsa-dancing grandma squad. Linda still wobbled in heels, but hey, progress. That battered notebook. Now a relic passed around like a sacred baton, its spine cracked with stories. Linda's sadness hadn't vanished, it just made room for confetti. Age brought surprises. Who knew she'd crave glitter pens? 51, but watching women bloom from timid scribblers to bold storytellers. Priceless. Your turn. Snag a napkin, a receipt, whatever, start where you are. Burn rules, not toast.